The medical bay on Nexus Station was always busy. Dr. Huan-Su checked his watch and sighed. It was already past noon and he had seen 15 patients since morning. The space station served many different alien species who traveled through this sector of the galaxy. Each day brought new challenges and strange medical cases. Huan-Su was one of only 3 human doctors on the station. Most aliens preferred doctors from their own species, but sometimes they had no choice. The human medical section was smaller than others, but it stayed busy treating anyone who needed help. A loud noise came from the entrance of the medical bay. 2 tall alien traders were dragging something heavy between them. Huan-Su looked up from his desk to see what was happening. The aliens had blue skin and 6 arms each. They were Valaxians, known throughout the galaxy as merchants who would trade anything for the right price. Between them, they carried a large furry creature that looked like a leopard from old Earth pictures. But this leopard was much bigger than any Earth animal. It stood almost as tall as Huan-Su's waist and had strange crystal-like patches growing along its back. The crystals were dull and lifeless looking. "We need doctor," one of the Valaxian traders said in broken standard language. His translator device was old and did not work very well. "Pet animal hurt. Can pay good money." Huan-Su walked over to look at the creature. It was breathing, but very slowly. Its eyes were closed and its fur looked old and worn. The crystal patches on its back were cracked in several places. This was a Catherian leopard, a very rare and expensive pet that only wealthy beings could afford. "What happened to it?" Huan-Su asked as he ran his medical scanner over the animal. The reading showed multiple problems. The creature was very old and several of its organs were not working properly. The first trader looked nervous. His 6 arms moved in different directions as he spoke. "It fell from loading platform. Very clumsy. Getting old and stupid. We bring here to fix." Huan-Su had been a doctor for 10 years. He knew when someone was lying to him. The injuries on this leopard did not come from a fall. They came from long-term neglect and poor care. The animal had been sick for a long time without proper treatment. "I see," Huan-Su said calmly. He did not want to accuse the traders directly. "The treatment will take many hours. This animal is very old and sick. It will cost a lot of money to help it." The second trader's eyes grew wide when Huan-Su told them the price. The 2 aliens whispered to each other in their own language. Huan-Su could not understand their words, but their body language told him everything he needed to know. "We think about it," the first trader said. "Come back later with decision." Huan-Su watched them leave through the medical bay doors. They walked quickly like they were in a hurry to get away. 20 minutes later, he saw their ship leaving the station through the window. He was not surprised. This happened more often than he liked to admit. Wealthy aliens would buy exotic pets to show off their status. When the animals got old or sick, the owners did not want to pay for expensive medical care. They would bring the animals to medical stations with fake stories about accidents, then disappear while the doctors were not looking. Huan-Su looked down at the Catherian leopard lying on the examination table. The creature's breathing was very weak. Its fur was gray and thin in many places. The crystal patches on its back were supposed to glow with bright colors when the animal was healthy. But these crystals looked dead. The doctor checked his medical computer for information about Catherian leopards. They were native to a planet called Catheria, in the Outer Rim territories. Adult leopards could live for over 300 years if they received proper care. They were intelligent animals, much smarter than most pets, but they were still just animals. Huan-Su read that healthy Catherian leopards were very social creatures. They needed interaction with other beings to stay mentally healthy. When kept alone as pets, they often became depressed and stopped eating properly. This leopard showed all the signs of long-term isolation and neglect. The medical bay's computer system beeped to remind him about his next appointment. Huan-Su looked at the leopard again. Station policy was clear about abandoned animals. They could receive basic comfort care, but expensive treatments were reserved for sentient species with citizenship rights. This old leopard was clearly dying. Even with the best treatment available, it might only live a few more months. The medical bay was already overcrowded with more urgent cases. Resources were limited and had to be used wisely. Huan-Su moved to his computer terminal to file the case report. He would put the leopard in the low-priority section and provide basic pain medication to keep it comfortable. When space was needed for more important patients, difficult decisions would have to be made. As he started typing, the leopard opened its eyes. For just a moment, Huan-Su felt like the animal was looking directly at him. Not just looking, but really seeing him as an individual. The eyes were ancient and sad. But there was something else there too, something that seemed almost like understanding. The moment passed quickly. The leopard closed its eyes again and returned to its slow, labored breathing. Huan-Su shook his head and finished typing his report. He was probably just imagining things. After working long hours in the medical bay, doctors sometimes saw things that were not really there. He completed the paperwork and moved the leopard to a small recovery room in the back of the medical bay. The room was quiet and away from the main treatment areas. The leopard would be comfortable there while the medical staff decided what to do next. Before leaving for his next patient, Huan-Su adjusted the blankets around the leopard and checked that the pain medication was working properly. The animal seemed peaceful, but those strange eyes opened once more as he worked. This time Huan-Su was sure he saw something in those eyes that looked almost like gratitude. He told himself it was just his imagination, but the feeling stayed with him as he returned to his other duties. Something about this old abandoned leopard was different from other animals he had treated. As the day continued with its usual stream of patients and emergencies, Huan-Su found his thoughts returning to the quiet recovery room where the Catherian leopard lay waiting. He did not know why, but he felt like something important was about to happen. 3 days passed before Huan-Su found time to check on the abandoned Catherian leopard. The medical bay had been extremely busy after a mining accident on the lower levels of the station. 17 miners had been injured when an old support beam collapsed in Tunnel 7. Most of the medical staff had worked around the clock to save lives. Huan-Su was exhausted. He had not slept more than 4 hours in the past 3 days. His hand shook slightly from too much caffeine and not enough rest. He almost forgot about the leopard completely until he saw the recovery room door while walking to his office. When he opened the door, Huan-Su expected to find the leopard in worse condition than before. Most abandoned animals got sicker when left without constant care. Instead, he found something that made him stop and stare in surprise. The leopard was awake and sitting upright. Its breathing seemed stronger and more regular than 3 days ago. The crystal patches on its back still looked dull, but they were no longer completely lifeless. More strange was what the animal had done with its blankets. The leopard had arranged the blankets in a very specific pattern around its sleeping area. The blankets were folded and placed in a way that looked almost like geometric shapes. It was not random or messy like most animals would leave things. It looked planned and careful. "You are still alive," Huan-Su said quietly as he entered the room. The leopard turned its head to look at him directly. Again, he felt that strange sense that the animal was really seeing him as an individual person, not just another human. Huan-Su checked his medical scanner readings. The results confused him. While the leopard was still very sick, several important signs had gotten better instead of worse. Its heart rate was more stable. The inflammation in its organs had decreased slightly. Some blood markers showed improvement. This did not make sense. Old abandoned animals usually got worse quickly when left alone. They became depressed and stopped trying to live. This leopard seemed to be fighting to stay alive, almost like it had a reason to keep going. The doctor sat down in the chair next to the recovery bed. He needed to rest for a few minutes anyway. The leopard watched him carefully but showed no fear or aggression. If anything, it seemed calm and patient, like it was waiting for something specific to happen. Huan-Su's personal communicator beeped with an incoming message. The sender was Dr. Yuna from the Xenobiology department. She studied alien life forms and sometimes helped with unusual medical cases. "Huan-Su, I heard you have a Catherian leopard in the medical bay. Would it be possible for me to examine it? I am writing a research paper about their species and need more data." He looked at the leopard again. It was still watching him with those intelligent eyes. Something told him that getting a second opinion would be a good idea. "Yes, I could use your help with this case. Can you come to Recovery Room 3? 20 minutes later, Dr. Yuna arrived carrying a large bag of specialized equipment. She was known throughout the station for being very careful and detailed in her work. If anyone could figure out what was unusual about this leopard, it would be her. "This is remarkable," Yuna said as soon as she saw the animal. "This is a very old specimen, probably over 200 years old. Look at those crystal formations on its spine. They are much more developed than anything I have seen in the research files." She began running her specialized scanners over the leopard. The animal remained perfectly still during the examination, almost like it understood what was happening and wanted to help. Hwan-Su, this is very interesting.
The crystalline structures are not just decorative.
They are showing active neural activity patterns. I have never seen this level of development in any previous studies of this species. What does that mean exactly? Yuna frowned at her scanner readings. Cytherian leopards are known to be intelligent animals, but this level of neural development suggests something far beyond normal animal intelligence. These crystals might be working like biological computers of some kind. As if the leopard could understand their conversation, it lifted its head and made a series of soft sounds. The sounds were clearly deliberate and organized, not random animal noises. They had a musical quality that seemed almost like a pattern or language. Did you hear that? Yuna whispered, her scanner working frantically to record everything. The vocalizations are creating harmonic frequencies that match the resonance patterns in the crystalline structures. It is trying to communicate with us. Hwan-Su felt a cold sensation run down his back. He remembered the moment when the leopard had first looked at him. That feeling of recognition he had dismissed as his imagination. Are you saying this is not just an animal? I am saying we might be dealing with a form of intelligence that we do not understand yet. The abandonment by its owners might not have been about medical costs. They might have realized what they were dealing with and become frightened. The leopard made another series of musical sounds. This time both doctors could hear that the rhythm and tone changes seemed purposeful, like someone trying to have a conversation in a language they did not know. Yuna continued her scans while making detailed notes. Look at these neural pathway readings. The brain activity is showing patterns similar to what we see in sentient species during problem-solving tasks. This is not typical animal cognition, but it has been classified as a non-sentient pet species for hundreds of years, Hwan-Su said. How could everyone be wrong about something so important? Maybe everyone was not wrong. Maybe something changed. Or maybe the intelligence was always there, but hidden for some reason. The leopard made another sound, softer this time, and looked directly at Hwan-Su. In that moment, he felt certain that the animal was trying to thank him for not giving up on it. We need to report this to Station Command, Yuna said quietly. If this being is truly intelligent, then keeping it here as an abandoned pet could be a violation of sentient rights laws. Hwan-Su nodded, though he felt overwhelmed by the implications. What had started as a simple case of animal abandonment was becoming something much more complicated and important. The old leopard that had been ignored and left to die might actually be a thinking, feeling being that had been trapped and unable to communicate its true nature, and somehow it had chosen to reveal itself to them. The emergency meeting room on Nexus Station had never seen such an unusual gathering. Commander Park sat at the head of the long table, his military uniform pressed and his expression serious. Around him sat doctors, scientists, legal experts, and representatives from different alien species. Dr. Hwan-Su felt nervous as he took his seat next to Dr. Yuna. In the past week, their discovery about the Cytherian leopard had reached the highest levels of station command. What they had thought was a simple medical case had become a major diplomatic situation. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Commander Park began, looking directly at the two doctors. You are telling me that what we classified as an abandoned pet might actually be a sentient being with rights under galactic law. Dr. Yuna nodded and activated the large screen at the front of the room. Her research data filled the display with charts, graphs, and scanner readings. The evidence is very strong, Commander. Over the past week, the subject has shown problem-solving abilities that go far beyond anything documented for Cytherian leopards. She changed the display to show video recordings from the recovery room. It has learned to operate the basic environmental controls in its containment unit. Yesterday, it figured out how to adjust the lighting and temperature to exactly the levels it preferred. Hwan-Su stood up to add his observations. More importantly, it appears to be trying to teach us how to communicate with it. For 3 days straight, it spent hours repeating specific sequences of sounds while pointing to different objects in the room. The legal representative from the Galactic Sentient Rights Commission leaned forward with great interest. She was a tall, thin alien with gray skin and large black eyes. Her name was Advocate Kethfor, and she was known throughout the galaxy for defending the rights of oppressed beings. Have you attempted to establish formal communication protocols? Kethfor asked in her precise, careful voice. We have been proceeding very slowly, Yuna replied. If this being has been held as a pet for years or decades, it might have serious psychological trauma. We decided to let it control the pace of all interactions. Commander Park frowned deeply. What are the legal implications if we officially recognize this creature as sentient? What would that mean for the station? Kethvor's expression became very serious. If the being was indeed held against its will as a pet, it would constitute slavery under galactic law. The previous owners could face severe criminal penalties. The being would be entitled to full legal protection and compensation for its suffering. There is something else I have not reported yet, Hwansu said quietly. The room became completely silent. Yesterday morning, when I was alone with it during routine medical care, it spoke to me. Everyone in the room stared at him. Commander Park's eyebrows rose high. Spoke how? What did it say? Single words in standard language. It said thank you when I adjusted its bedding. It asked for water when it was thirsty. The pronunciation was difficult for its mouth structure, but the words were clear and unmistakable. Dr. Yuna's scanner data had already detected brain activity patterns consistent with language processing, but hearing actual speech removed any remaining doubt about the creature's mental abilities. We need to establish formal first contact protocols immediately, Kethvor declared, her voice rising with urgency. This being has fundamental rights under galactic law that have been severely violated. The station has a legal obligation to provide protection and assistance. The xenobiology expert from the station's science department, Dr. Tae-hyun, raised his hand to speak. I have been reviewing all available data about Kitherian leopards in our databases. There are some very disturbing historical records that might explain this situation. He activated his own data display. Ancient trade records show that Kitheria was once listed as a restricted world due to the presence of intelligent life. But those restrictions were lifted about 400 years ago, after reports claimed the intelligent species had gone extinct. What kind of intelligent species? Commander Park asked. The records are incomplete, but they describe a civilization that used crystalline technology and communicated through harmonic frequencies. Sound familiar? The implications hit everyone in the room at the same time. The Kitherian leopards were not animals that had developed intelligence. They were the survivors of an intelligent species that had been reduced to the status of pets after some great disaster. How many Kitherian leopards are currently held as pets throughout the galaxy? Kethvor asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected the answer would be disturbing. Dr. Tae-hyun consulted his database. According to trade registration records, at least 63 individuals are currently owned by private collectors across 12 different star systems. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. If the leopard in their medical bay was truly representative of its species, then dozens of intelligent beings were being held as exotic pets throughout civilized space. We need to be very careful how we proceed, Commander Park said slowly. If word of this gets out before we understand the full situation, it could cause panic among current owners. Some might try to hide or even kill their animals to avoid legal consequences. The being downstairs chose to reveal itself to us, Hwansu pointed out. It trusted us enough to show its true nature. We have an obligation to honor that trust. Advocate Kethvor stood up from her chair. I am officially requesting immediate protective custody for the individual currently in your medical bay. As of this moment, it is under the protection of galactic sentient rights law. Granted, Commander Park replied without hesitation. Dr. Hwansu, you will continue as primary contact. Dr. Yuna, I want you to work with our linguistics department to develop better communication methods. He looked around the room at all the assembled experts. And I want this kept absolutely secret until we understand exactly what we are dealing with. If there are 63 members of an intelligent species being held as pets, we need to figure out how to free them without causing more harm. As the meeting ended, Hwansu felt the enormous weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. The old leopard waiting in the medical bay was no longer just a patient. It was potentially the first member of its species to achieve recognized freedom in hundreds of years. Whatever happened next would determine the fate of an entire civilization that the galaxy had unknowingly enslaved. The fourth week of what everyone now called the Kitherian Contact Project brought the biggest breakthrough yet. Hwansu had spent countless hours with the being, who had started responding to the name Wise Singer after they discovered the musical nature of its communication attempts. The medical bay had been completely transformed. Special equipment lined the walls to record and analyze every sound the creature made. Translation computers worked day and night trying to understand the complex patterns of music and meaning in its voice. Wise Singer had shown remarkable patience during this process. It seemed to understand that building communication between two very different species would take time and effort from both sides. Every day it tried new ways to help the humans understand what it was trying to say. "Today feels different," said Ensign Jamin as he arrived for the morning session. The young linguistics specialist had become essential to developing the translation systems. The harmonic patterns from yesterday showed mathematical sequences I have never seen before. Wise Singer was awake and alert when they entered the communication room. The crystal structures along its spine glowed with soft blue light that had become much brighter as its health improved. The medical team had learned that these lights changed color and intensity based on the creature's emotional state. "Good morning, Wise Singer," Hwansu said, using the formal greeting they had established over the past weeks. The being responded with a complex series of musical tones that the translation system interpreted as happiness and welcome. What happened next changed everything they thought they knew. Wise Singer approached the communication console that had been specially built for these sessions. Using its paws with surprising skill and control, it began operating the harmonic output controls. The sounds that came from the speakers were completely different from anything they had heard before. Instead of simple animal sounds or basic attempts at human words, this was sophisticated communication that bypassed their translation system entirely. The creature was speaking directly in standard language, though with a heavy accent that showed how difficult it was for its mouth and throat to form human words. "My people," Wise Singer said slowly and clearly, "are not what you think we are." Ensign Jamin dropped his recording equipment. Hwansu felt his breath catch in his throat and his heart start beating faster. They had achieved basic word exchanges over the past weeks, but this level of complex speech was completely unexpected. "Tell us," Hwansu managed to say when he recovered from his shock. "Help us understand what you mean." Wise Singer's ancient eyes seemed to look past them, into memories that stretched across centuries of time. When it spoke again, its voice carried the weight of tremendous sadness and loss. "Long ago, before the Star Roads brought traders to our world, my people built great cities among the crystal forests. We sang the songs that made light dance and grew food with harmony instead of tools. The translation of complex ideas proved challenging, but the meaning became clear through repetition and gestures. The Catherian leopards were not primitive animals that had somehow developed intelligence. They were the survivors of an advanced civilization that had fallen into ruin through some terrible catastrophe. What happened to your people?" Jamin asked softly, his voice full of sympathy and concern. "The silent death came from the void between stars," Wise Singer replied, its crystals dimming with what could only be grief. "It ate our songs first, then our ability to remember how to sing them. Most of my kind became as you found me, aware but unable to speak our true nature to others." The creature paused for a long moment, gathering strength to continue its story. "I am among the last who remember the time before the darkness fell. When the traders came to our world, they saw only valuable animals that could be sold as pets. I let them believe this because survival required hiding what remained of who we truly were. The revelation hit both humans like a physical blow to the chest. An entire species of intelligent beings had been reduced to exotic pets throughout the galaxy. Their intelligence had been hidden by necessity and the trauma of whatever disaster had befallen their world. How many of your people are still alive out there?" Hwansu asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. "Unknown," Wise Singer replied sadly. "We are scattered across the trade routes as curiosities and companions for wealthy beings. Some may still remember as I do. Others may have forgotten entirely, lost forever in the silence that took our world." The creature looked directly at Hwansu with those ancient, intelligent eyes. Again he felt that sense of being truly seen and understood by a mind that was very different from his own, but no less real or valid. "You chose to help me when others would have let me die alone and forgotten. This is why I decided to reveal myself to you. Your species shows promise for understanding what we have lost and helping us find it again." The weight of responsibility that Hwansu had been carrying suddenly felt much heavier, but also somehow shared. This was no longer just about one abandoned animal or even one intelligent being. It was about the potential restoration of an entire civilization that the galaxy had unknowingly enslaved. "What do you want us to do?" he asked. "How can we help your people?" "First, you must convince your leaders that we are truly intelligent beings deserving of freedom. Then you must help find and free those of my people who are still held as pets. Finally, if any of our old knowledge survives in your databases, help us remember what we have forgotten." Wise Singer's crystals brightened with what looked like hope. "We do not seek revenge for what has happened. The silent death that broke our civilization was not caused by any of the species who later found us, but we do seek the chance to rebuild and become part of the galactic community as equals rather than property." Jamin was frantically recording every word while trying to process the implications of what they were hearing. "How many of your people might be able to recover like you have?" "I do not know," Wise Singer admitted. The damage done by the silent death was different for each individual. Some might recover quickly with proper care and social contact. Others might be lost forever. But every life saved would be worth the effort. As the session continued, Hwansu realized that humanity had stumbled into something far more significant than first contact with a new species. They had discovered the survivors of a Holocaust and been given the opportunity to help resurrect a lost civilization. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the potential for good that could come from their actions. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything that had happened in over 200 years. Representatives from dozens of different species appeared as holograms in the Great Chamber on Centauri Prime. The news from Nexus Station had spread through diplomatic channels faster than anyone expected. Commander Park stood at the central podium, presenting evidence that would change galactic law forever. Behind him, a large screen displayed all the data they had collected about Wise Singer and the Catherian people. Wise Singer had requested to address the council directly. This request carried huge legal importance because no being previously classified as non-sentient had ever been allowed to speak to the governing body of galactic civilization. Hwansu stood beside the special communication pod they had built for this moment. His role had grown from doctor to cultural ambassador for an entire species. Wise Singer rested within the pod, connected to advanced translation systems that could project its harmonic language to all the assembled delegates. "Honored representatives of the Galactic Council," Wise Singer began, its voice carrying the weight of centuries of suffering and hope. "I speak not only for myself, but for all my people who have been scattered among your worlds, unable to cry out their true nature." The great chamber fell completely silent. Even the background hum of the translation systems seemed quieter as delegates from across the galaxy listened to words that would reshape their understanding of justice and rights. "We do not seek revenge for what has happened to us," Wise Singer continued. "The silent death that broke our civilization and stole our voices was not caused by any of your peoples. But we ask for recognition of what we were and assistance in becoming what we might yet be again." Council President Zel Ator, an elderly Centaurian with silver skin and wise eyes, leaned forward with visible interest. "What specific assistance do you seek, Wise Singer of the Catherian people?" "First, we ask for the location and liberation of our people who remain in captivity throughout your territories. Second, we request access to any archived songs and knowledge of our world that might survive in your databases. Third, we seek the opportunity to rebuild our civilization alongside those who would welcome us as equals." Advocate Keith Vore, who had traveled from Nexus Station specifically for this hearing, stood to address the assembly. "The Sentient Rights Commission has documented at least 67 Catherian individuals currently held in private collections across 14 different star systems. If Wise Singer's testimony is accurate, these represent survivors of a genocide that has continued unknowingly for generations." A wave of shocked whispers ran through the assembly as delegates processed this information. The Galactic Council had built its entire authority on the principle of protecting sentient life. Yet they had unknowingly presided over a system that reduced an entire intelligent species to the status of exotic pets. Dr. Yuna, speaking as an expert witness through holographic projection, presented her research findings to the Council. "Our detailed analysis suggests that the silent death referenced by Wise Singer was likely a form of psychic plague that specifically targeted the neural pathways responsible for complex communication. The affected individuals retained their intelligence, but lost the ability to express it in ways recognizable to other species. She changed her display to show brain scan comparisons. Furthermore, the recovery we have observed in Weisinger suggests that this condition may be reversible with proper medical treatment and social interaction. Each Cytherian we locate and restore could potentially help in the recovery of others. The debate that followed was intense but surprisingly short. Representatives from species across the galaxy spoke passionately about the implications of the discovery. Some worried about the legal consequences of recognizing the Cytherians as sentient. Others argued that justice demanded immediate action regardless of the complications. The Andromedian delegate, Ambassador Vextar, stood to make a crucial point. If we fail to act on this evidence, we become complicit in the ongoing enslavement of an intelligent species. The reputation and moral authority of this council depends on our response to this crisis. The Terran representative, Ambassador Kim, added her voice to the growing consensus. Humanity discovered this situation by showing basic compassion to what appeared to be a dying animal. That simple act of kindness has revealed one of the greatest injustices in our galaxy's recent history. We have an obligation to follow through with the same compassion on a larger scale. When President Zelator called for the formal vote, the result was overwhelming. Only 3 delegates abstained, and none voted against the resolution. By the unanimous authority of this council, President Zelator announced, his voice carrying across the galaxy through faster-than-light communication networks. We hereby recognize the Cytherian people as a sovereign sentient species entitled to all rights and protections under galactic law. The President continued with the practical implications of the decision. We further authorize immediate action to locate and liberate all Cytherian individuals currently held in inappropriate circumstances. The Commission for Sentient Rights will coordinate rescue operations across all member territories. Weisinger's crystals blazed with brilliant light as the translation systems conveyed its response to the assembled delegates. On behalf of my people, scattered though we may be across the stars, I thank you for this recognition. Today, the songs of Cytheria begin to return to the galaxy after centuries of silence. Hwansu felt tears running down his face as he watched a being he had almost abandoned to die become the voice of liberation for an entire species. The old leopard that had been ignored in a busy medical bay had become the catalyst for one of the most significant diplomatic developments in galactic history. President Zelator addressed Weisinger directly. The Council places significant resources at your disposal for the recovery of your people. We also commit to searching our historical databases for any surviving records of Cytherian civilization. Your generosity gives us hope for the future, Weisinger replied. But I must warn you that the recovery process will not be easy. Many of my people have been held as pets for decades or even centuries. The psychological trauma will require careful treatment. Some may never fully recover their ability to communicate. We understand, President Zelator assured the Cytherian speaker. The Council is prepared for a long-term commitment to your people's restoration. This is not just about legal recognition, but about justice and healing. As the historic session concluded, Hwansu realized that his simple decision to show kindness to a dying animal had grown into something that would reshape the galaxy's approach to intelligence, dignity, and the responsibility that all sentient beings had toward each other. 6 months after the historic Galactic Council session, Hwansu stood in the observation deck of Nexus Station, watching the most beautiful sight he had ever seen. The newly built ship called Song of Cytheria floated gracefully outside the station, its hull gleaming silver and blue in the light of distant stars. The ship would carry Weisinger and 15 other recovered Cytherian individuals back to their homeworld. After centuries of separation, the survivors were finally going home to begin the work of rebuilding their civilization. The recovery program had succeeded beyond everyone's wildest hopes. Of the 78 Cytherians found throughout the galaxy, 56 had shown significant improvement when exposed to the harmonic therapy methods developed from Weisinger's original communications. Each recovered individual had brought fragments of their lost cultural knowledge back to the growing community. It is amazing how much they remembered once they could speak again, Dr. Yuna said, joining Hwansu at the large window. Each one carried pieces of songs, stories, and scientific knowledge that their people thought was lost forever. The recovery process had not been easy. Many of the Cytherians had been held as pets for decades or even centuries. Some had psychological trauma that would take years to heal. A few had been damaged so badly by isolation and neglect that they might never fully recover their ability to communicate. But for every heartbreaking case, there had been moments of incredible joy. Hwansu would never forget the day when two elderly Kitherians recognized each other as childhood friends, who had been separated when the traders first came to their world. Their reunion had moved everyone who witnessed it to tears. Wise Singer had emerged as the natural leader of the recovered Kitherians. The being who had once been abandoned to die was now coordinating the largest species recovery effort in galactic history. Its patience, wisdom, and determination had inspired both its own people and the many different species working to help them. The medical scans from their homeworld are encouraging, Hwansu said. Reading from his datapad, the planet has healed significantly since the silent death passed. The crystal forests are growing again, and the environmental conditions should support a healthy population. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Wise Singer's image appeared on the wall screen. Its harmonic voice now perfectly clear through the advanced translation systems developed specifically for Kitherian communication patterns. Friend Hwansu, it said, using the formal address that had become their standard greeting. I wanted to speak with you before our departure for home. Of course, Wise Singer. You know I am always happy to talk with you. What you did in that medical bay when you chose compassion over convenience has changed the fate of my entire species. This is not something that can be repaid with simple words of gratitude. Hwansu shook his head firmly. You do not owe me anything. I was just doing my job as a doctor. Anyone else would have done the same thing. No, Wise Singer replied, its crystals glowing with gentle warmth. You are being human in the best sense of what that word means. Your species has a saying about casting bread upon the waters and having it return as a feast. You showed kindness to a dying animal and received the friendship of a civilization in return. What will you do now when you reach Kitheria? We will sing the old songs that we still remember, and we will create new ones for the life we are building. Our world is healing as we are healing. In time, perhaps we can take our place again among the community of sentient species as contributors rather than just survivors. Wise Singer paused, and when it continued, its voice carried a note of deep emotion. But we will never forget that our return to freedom began with one human doctor who chose to see potential where others saw only burden. This story will be sung in our halls for as long as our people survive. Dr. Yuna stepped closer to the communication screen. What about the Kitherians who could not be recovered? Will you continue searching for them? Always, Wise Singer replied with determination. Every one of our people who remains lost is a song that has been silenced. We will never stop trying to bring them home. But we also know that some may choose to remain with the families who cared for them, especially if those relationships were built on genuine love rather than ownership. The recovery teams had indeed found some complicated situations. A few Kitherians had been cared for by owners who truly loved them, even before understanding their intelligence. These cases required careful handling to ensure that both the Kitherians and their former owners could maintain positive relationships while respecting the new legal realities. The galaxy is changing because of what happened here, Hwansu observed. New laws, new standards for determining intelligence, new protections for species that might be more than they appear. Change is the nature of life, Wise Singer replied philosophically. But this change gives hope to all beings who have been overlooked or underestimated. Your people have shown that true strength comes from the willingness to help those who cannot help themselves. As the Song of Kitheria began its final preparations for departure, Hwansu reflected on the incredible chain of events that had led to this moment. A simple decision to provide basic medical care to what appeared to be an abandoned animal had grown into something that would be remembered throughout galactic history. The abandoned leopard that had seemed destined to die, alone in a medical bay, was now traveling home to lead the resurrection of its people. Somewhere in the cosmic mystery of that transformation, Hwansu found a renewed faith in the power of individual choices to change the universe itself. Safe travels, my friend, he said to Wise Singer. May your songs fill the galaxy with beauty. And may your people always remember that the greatest victories come not from conquest, but from compassion. Wise Singer replied. Until we meet again among the stars. The communication ended, and soon after, the Song of Kitheria began its journey home. Huansu watched until the ship disappeared into the star-filled darkness, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of an entire civilization reborn. In his pocket, his communicator chimed with a message about his next patient. With a smile, he turned away from the window and headed back to the medical bay. There was always someone who needed help, and he had learned that even the smallest acts of kindness could echo across the galaxy in ways no one could predict. The stars had witnessed many wonders throughout their long existence, but few as profound as the moment when one species chose to truly see another, and in that recognition both had been transformed forever.